Hello, welcome back. In lesson 5 we're going to cover something called the jobs tool, and what the jobs tool allows us to do is execute administrative functions on a schedule so that we can do very unique things with Drivve, and we can build out jobs for certain customers, and we can keep a system updated. So if you remember when we installed Drivve, there was a folder here called the Drivve setup files folder that was extracted when we ran the setup. This is where all the tools and the frameworks and things like that the Drivve installation needs are placed, but we also have a couple things that aren't set up automatically. The most important one of those here is the one that we're going to go through. Let's see, it's in services, and we have this setup called the setup jobs scheduler. So I'm going to run this as an administrator, and this is an extra application that you can install on the Drivve server, or in the case of a cloud instance you can install it on your local server, and it allows us to do a lot of different jobs that we've got set up here. There are some other ones that we can do in addition to these, but here just for instance, space import, index export, LDAP synchronization, workflow notifications. We have an SAP connector. We can also do an email to file system where if a user wanted to email a job or email a document and have it brought into Drivve. So you want to install this as an administrator, you want to install it, I guess it doesn't really matter if it's on the Drivve server or not, but that's the easiest way to do it. It's going to set up a Windows service here called the Drivve Jobs service or Drivve Jobs Scheduler service, and the account that runs under is what we're going to use to run these jobs. So it'll create a program in the Drive folder here, Drivve's Job Scheduler. And the first thing that we're going to want to do is, in the settings, set up an SMTP server and an admin account so that we can use this SMTP server for the email notifications for these jobs. And then here I'm going to add a unique job, and as I went through before, we have these list of jobs. The first one that I'm going to do, or go through at least, is the workflow notification. So I create a new job. I need to name this job up top. Here I can select if it's on-premise or cloud. I'm just going to use a public account, and we'll do the localhost. And so we log in, and we've successfully logged into our Drivve server. And then here we have a couple of tabs here. So first is the login. Then I can set the schedule for this job. So I can either run it immediately after saving, or run it at a certain time, or run it at a certain interval. And then here in the settings I can select what's actually happening with this job. And because this job is a workflow notification job, it's going to be mainly based around the email notifications. And so the first is here I have a daily summary. I can send a daily summary of all the workflows to all the users so they can see which ones they have and which ones they need to claim. We can also send an update whenever a workflow has been changed, whenever it's been set to new or anything like that. We can also make an observation, so whenever a workflow hits a certain step, or it's finished, or it's been overdue, we can set some actions. So for instance, we can update space fields, we can update document fields, and we can send an email to somebody. We can also set the date from which it starts. So that's where we can do things like update hidden fields whenever something becomes overdue, so that we can run cross checks of the index fields. It's also how you would set up email notifications for the workflows. The index export job, that's what Drivve will use to create a backup of all the documents and of the index fields. If someone wants to have all of their documents on a schedule brought into another physical drive or another folder on the server, we can do that in its document's original file format along with a CSV or an XML file. So that's the tool that you would use to keep a copy of everything outside of the Drivve database. LDAP synchronization, this is pretty straightforward. That's going to be where you bring in all the users. If we wanted to bring in all users from an Active Directory server and sync them in Drivve, we can do that. That's really more suited towards the concurrent seat license. Email to file system, would be where you could set up an email address and users could email something to that address. We can check that address and put the document into a Drivve image hot folder so it can go up to Drivve. So common function there is email to my inbox. SAP by design connector. We're not going to go through that, but pretty much we can sync all the spaces and the documents in Drivve with an SAP system. And last but not least, the Drivve space import job. I'm going to go through this one specifically because it's a little more relevant to the last video. This job allows us to sync all the spaces with an external SQL source. So for instance, if we have a QuickBooks account or a QuickBooks application or some other accounting or ERP system, what we can do is import or sync all of our Drivve spaces with that other system. So for instance, if we're doing it from a database, we can select from our available system DSNs here, and we could sync, let's select all these fields from the database, and what we can do is set static field values. So for instance, we want all of the results from this database to be the vendors that are brought in as vendor spaces. We can also map the fields. Let's see, I guess I don't have a real ODBC source, but here we can map the fields in Drivve with the spaces, and we can set which is the unique field. Is it the number of the space or the name of the space? So another good example with this would be a school. If the school has a student record system which houses all the metadata for all the students, we could sync that with the space for each student in Drivve so that whenever anything is changed in the metadata system, in the student record system, that change will be reflected in the spaces inside of Drivve. So when I go to find a student, I can search by anything I know about that student. The number, the name, the grade, the homeroom teacher even. As long as that's coming from the other database, we can bring that information into the space. All the documentation for the jobs tool is available at drivve.com. There are specific FAQs for each one if you search jobs tool. The other important thing to remember is that there are a few other jobs tools that we have that can check unique conditions within the system. And if you ever have an issue where you need something to be written, it's quite simple for us to write these jobs tools for you. So that's available as professional services if you have anything unique, but even just the built-in jobs tool should help with some more administrative functions. Thanks for watching. This was the Lesson 5 Jobs Tool.